Okay, this is my LUT1 presentation on cap and trade, on the cap and trade scheme. I claim that it is a global wealth distribution scheme, and it's not a mechanism for global emission reductions. Okay, what we're going to talk about in the presentation: what is cap and trade, what are the mechanisms of cap and trade, and then what's the potential profit. Why do I think it's wealth building and not for global reasons? What is cap and trade? The best example I've got of cap and trade is the acid rain reduction cap and trade plan that was instituted by the United States and Canada in 1995. And what it entails is we had the electrical generators, the electrical plants were putting sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxide in the air. The combination of that with the atmosphere was causing acid rain and degrading plant life and waterways. So the two countries got together, decided that they would do a cap and trade system, which means that any producer of something that you want to control, you put a cap on it, a limit where they can't have but so much, and then you hold them accountable for that. And if one producer is over the limit, they can capture or purchase credits from someone in another area that is less, so that you got a balance. So you've got a total cap of emissions. If somebody's a little over, they can buy credits from somebody that's a little under.
So why is cap and trade for carbon dioxide different from the successful scheme for acid rain?
Okay, carbon dioxide is different from the scheme for acid rain because this was a regional issue where we knew that we had certain producers of carbon or of sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxide that we had scientific proof was causing acid rain, and we had the input and output. This was also very regional and only in this area. The global cap and trade scheme that's being talked about in front of Congress now, let's talk about carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a natural occurring gas emission, and it's non-poisonous. So not only are we talking about something that's not as poisonous as the two in the acid rain example, we're also going from a regional example to a global example. So you're going to try to cap carbon dioxide emissions globally, which is much more difficult than to do it regionally. Okay, what are some of the mechanisms of cap and trade system? The first mechanism is the Clean Development Mechanism, or CDM, and the way that works is that you have an industry in a developed country like America that is exceeding its carbon allowance. So you put a cap on its CO2 emissions, and then it's exceeding those emissions. So it needs to do something to react so that it doesn't be in violation of the policy. So they'll get together, they develop a project that will reduce carbon emissions or sequester in another country. So they take the money for the project and they build a wind farm in Brazil or in an African country, a third world country, that produces electricity without using coal burning or oil. So what they've done is they take the credit from the project that they develop in the undeveloped world, third world country, and they use that credit to excuse them being over in the industrialized country. So that's the carbon credit transfer, where you take the wealth from the developed country, you move it to the undeveloped country, and that's the wealth distribution part of the CDM. This number here is the money transferred from this CDM mechanism by World Bank. Just by financing these things, in 2005 World Bank made $2.5 billion, and in 2006 made $5 billion in the transfer of funds from a developed country to an undeveloped country. So that again supports the theory that this is a wealth distribution scheme, not a global warming scheme. Second mechanism of cap and trade is a voluntary carbon offset, VCO. In this scheme, instead of being mandated like in the Kyoto Protocol, you have voluntary participation. So instead of mandatory cap and trade, you've got voluntary cap and trade. This gives a company an opportunity to use that in commercialism, where you can take and advertise just like organics or being organic in food processing. You can say that, hey, I'm environmentally friendly. We've got this program of voluntary carbon offsets. The way this works, and it's just a little different than the CDM, is that the developed country needs carbon credit. to keep from exceeding, they develop the project, they take the money and run with it, take it to the developing country, but instead of developing a project where they might put in a more efficient power plant or they put a wind farm in, they sequester the carbon by creating forests. So they'll go plant a bunch of trees in Brazil where we cut down the rainforest, they claim that as a carbon credit, and then they put that back into the carbon credit here to make them meet the balance. What's the potential for profit? And this is the one that most clearly identifies it as wealth distribution or a money scheme. World Bank finances the carbon credit market. So in order for this to work, you have to turn a carbon into a commodity like gold or wheat or corn. So what they've done is that they created a commodities market for carbon, where somebody's over, they need to purchase carbon credits, they go to this market, they'll purchase carbon credits from someone who has less than their allotment. And in this transaction, World Bank makes money. So World Bank creates a commodities market for carbon. In those commodity markets, they've got 11 funds that are worth $1.9 billion.
So how does World Bank profit from a carbon trading system?
Okay, World Bank, just like Scottrade for stock market here in the United States, World Bank charges for every transaction of a carbon credit trading. So they make 13% commission off of every trade between a person who needs carbon credits and the commodities market. So that's how World Bank's making its money. But if you've got a profit incentive, that's why you can't have an honest movement toward environmentalism, because it becomes profit-based. Okay, in summary, once you see the mechanisms in both voluntary offsets and CDMs from the Kyoto Protocol, and the potential for profit which World Bank exhibits, where they've got billions of dollars being exchanged in hands, and then you find that overall you're not having a reduction in carbon emissions into the atmosphere, even with this already in process in other countries, it's clear that you're not doing anything but redistributing wealth from developed countries to developing countries, and you're creating a commodity that's not a natural resource and doesn't depend on natural resources in that country. So this could be used at any level for any country just based on arbitrary decisions or arbitrary standards for carbon emissions. So that's why I feel like that's a wealth distribution scheme instead of environmentalism.